infantry guys and your tank guys and all this stuff and put it together and have one unit that can fight and kill and defeat the enemy, what would it be? And I said, well, sir, technically it'd be a Marine, right? And we were CAF, and he kind of laughed about it. I say this because our next speaker is a Marine, just like my dad, so I love the Marine Corps, so I shout out the Marine Corps all the time. So, Congressman Corrales, please come up and address our members.
Hoorah! Hoorah! How many Marines we got out there?
Semper Fi.
We are going to vote for a nominee for president and vice president who value service and patriotism. Are we not?
That's right. Hell yeah.
As somebody who immigrated to this country when I was 5, and my brother is here, he served in the Marine Corps, I served in the Marine Corps. And as immigrants, let me tell you, it's an honor of a lifetime to be able to serve for this country that's given us so many opportunities. Now as a member of Congress, serving on the House Armed Services Committee and working with Mr. Takano, Mr. DeLuzio, and others, I see it as my responsibility to not just support our veterans, our troops, service members that are serving today, domestically and overseas, but to make sure we take care of our service members and their families when they return from their service, be it war, be it domestic service. And to that end, let me just share a couple of things since they only gave me 2 minutes. I'm glad that the Biden administration has adopted this past week my bill to make disability compensation not countable so veterans can have more options for housing and not have to count their disability income as countable income like the IRS currently does. We know that so many men and women, mostly women, suffer from sexual trauma in the military, often put under the rug. I have a bill that would recognize the day of separation for those whose claims are submitted and adjudicated for military sexual trauma, and it's moving through the process, and we hope to get that over the finish line. And lastly, as a reservist, my brother was active duty, I was a reservist. There are many delayed entry reservists and ROTC members. Well, when we conduct exercises with the federal government before you actually go to boot camp, if you die during those trainings, your family members get nothing. Well, I have a bill that's going to change that. Thank you so much for letting me serve. Thank you for all of you that are veterans and for those of you that paid a heavy price to be here and for your service. Thank you so much.
So, as you all know, when it comes to solving issues, the issues that we're trying to solve aren't just our own personal fights, right? So we're veteran military families. It's not just veterans who have to be spokespeople or advocates for the issues we care about, but just people in general who care about our issue sets. Now, I know Busy is not a veteran, but nonetheless, Busy cares about veterans. So therefore, Busy Phillips.
Hi, I'm an actress. My name is Busy Phillips. And my father was in the Navy. Both of my grandfathers served in World War II. And outside of 1 week of tactical gun training that I did for a Danny McBride television show. Which one? It was called Vice Principals, but you guys, the scene got cut, so I didn't even get to use my 1 day of tactical gun training. However, it is such an honor to be here with you all today because all of you have given so tremendously to this country in ways that are, I mean, obviously unimaginable to me, outside of that 1 day of the tactical gun training. But I would love to, I want to just say thank you for your commitment and your dedication to ensuring our freedoms, all of our freedoms. And secondly, I would like to say to you that I believe you deserve representatives up and down the ballot that understand your unique issues and the things that face active service members and veterans and their families. And I think it's an honor that so many of them are here speaking today. It's been really nice to see and hear the things that they have to say. And also, I would love to recognize your council, this very council, and Teron Sims and Sue Hoppin, who I just met.
But we're besties now. It's all good.
Guys, we're BFFs. That is a Taylor Swift thing. Not just her. You got them too. Everybody's got the bracelets now, guys. It's been kind of a... Listen, I have watched as another party, political party, has tried to take ownership over those that serve, over patriotism. And quite frankly, no, they don't get to. No one gets to own this. Because I would also just like to point out that when you take a look at who, historically speaking, shows up again and again on a policy level for service members, for veterans and their families, it is the Democratic Party that continues to push for mental health care, for the VA, for an affordable middle class, for all of these things and all of these reasons, a quality of life that we can all be proud of. You all have given so tremendously to our country. You deserve to have a president who will have your back and a vice president who understands what it means to put on a uniform and actually be of service. I know for a fact that a Harris-Walz administration will make it a priority. Yes. I also think we all deserve an administration that does not cause embarrassment abroad. And on that note, I'm going to tell you a personal story, which is that I have a daughter who decided, oh, this is gonna make me cry. But after the insurrection of January 6th, she said, I don't wanna be in America anymore. They want us dead. Those people want us dead. And because she was 12 at the time, she was like, I mean, Dad, because he's Jewish. You, because all your abortion stuff. Me, because I'm like Jewish and probably queer. Cricket, her little sister. Cricket, Jewish. And I was like, good Lord, girl, slow down. And also, what we do is that we stay and we fight. And I won't let them kill you, I promise. And there are good people who won't let that happen. And they fight for our country. And that is what we do. They fight for everyone's rights, whether or not they agree with them. They respect everyone, whether or not they agree with their personal choices. That is the foundation of this country and freedom. My sweet girl. And then she said, okay, but I do want to go to boarding school abroad. Okay, so listen. She's spending the year in Sweden. Okay, I know. In my next life, I'm coming back as my own child. She called me and said, Mom, the European kids are making fun of me and the other American girls because of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, because the couch story made its way all the way to Sweden, guys. Oh my God. And I don't know about you all, but I just don't want horrible, hateful, small men who are very embarrassing to be a reflection of what this country is, because this country is incredible and diverse and interesting, and you all know that because you have committed your lives and your families have committed their lives in service of that, which is which deserves so much respect. So I've really been thinking about that, and these past few days, seeing Pete Buttigieg last night and Governor Walz speak, and I've been thinking about how much hope and joy, and but also just how much respect I have for everyone that I have seen take that stage. Everyone, even the entertainers. And I just feel like we all have this responsibility now to take the energy and the excitement and the positivity and go to our families, you know, whether they're our blood families or our families that we've spent time with in service, and talk to them. We have the ability to talk to them and make sure that they understand that they gotta show up, and that Harris Walz is the only option to restore our country and engender respect across the world, worldwide. And thank you all so much for being here and for your service. And I know that we're going to do this. I just feel very confident in it. And thank you for all the work that you do. And goodbye.
Oh, you're leaving here with a bracelet.
Oh, I got a bracelet.
Thanks, Busy. Appreciate it. So, you know, 2008 presidential campaign was the first time we had a really robust veterans and military families initiative apparatus activism in regards to democratic politics, obviously, which was motivated from Secretary Kerry being swift-boated during his presidential campaign. And one of the things we stressed during '08 was that combination of veterans and military families. One, just from a funny side note, because the defense folks from the policy side didn't want to do military families policy. So they're like, hey, come over with us. And we're like, fine, we love you guys. But that definition of military families isn't just, you know, your spouse or your sibling, but it's however it's connected. It's your parents, right? It's a cousin. Might be your best friend who lives across the street. I say that because our next speaker is a military family member. He is blessed to have a father who is a West Point graduate, and he also is my congressman. And as everyone knows, we all hate Congress, but we love our congressman. And I can definitely say that. I like mine, and he's my friend, Don Beyer. And Megan, too. Hey, Megan.
Good afternoon. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm an Army brat. My dad said you could always tell a Marine, but you couldn't tell him much. And, so I was born overseas. My dad was West Point, class of '46, and then Korea, and then 20 years active duty as a military police officer. So we lived Trieste, Italy, West Point, Fort Gordon, Fort Leavenworth. He was in Anahuac for a year, lots of time in the Pentagon. My mom had 6 children over 8 years in Army hospitals. And I got a buzz cut haircut every Friday for 90 cents and 10 cents to the Army barber. And when my dad finally retired, my mother said she was never moving again. No more yellow kitchens. And I was raised with the duty, honor, country was part of everything in our family. We were all terrified of my father because he was so big, but he was a loving man who insisted that we say sir and be polite, and that we lived our values, the duty, honor, country, and everything that we did. The last couple of days, we've heard honesty, decency, and dignity in speech after speech after speech. And it reminds me again and again that the values that we proclaim, that we've seen here in Chicago the last couple of days, are the exact same values that inspire our service members and their service families. It's the commitment to others. It's about not being about our own self, our own ego, what government can do for us, or our grievances. It's about selflessness and the willingness to separate from our families sometimes for a year or two, about going overseas, about living in military barracks. If you've dealt with the mold issue at Fort Belvoir, you know what I'm talking about. Amazing. I did a survey of all of the different bills that we have sponsored right now. I'm the lead on the Military Spouse Hiring Act, because right now unemployment among military spouses is 30%. And when you move every 2 years, it's awfully hard to build a career. And so we've got a great way to increase the tax credits for employers to bring on military spouses. But there are many, many more that are out there, because we have to recognize that our values are the values that inspire our military service members. You know, it's our military families, our military service members, who are the lead in the fight for freedom. That was the theme of this whole convention, is freedom. And right now, it's Kamala Harris and Tim Walz who are the commanding officers in our responsibility to carry that fight on. So I just want to say thank you so much. My dad always preached peace through strength. So I want to thank you for being strong, for being brave, for making sure that Kamala and Tim lead us in the years to come. And one of the things that we hear again and again too is that it's our military families who are the backbone of this country. Kamala said it again, when we fight, when we win. Let's fight to make sure that our military families will vote Democratic, should think Democratic, because that's the best interest of them and the best interest of the country. Thank you very much.
So when we were, I say we, because when I'm talking about the campaign, I say we a lot, so I apologize for this. So when we were finalizing national security policy for the Biden-Harris campaign, and we were discussing the PACT Act and creating the messaging points in there, I had to add in, because obviously the PACT Act is inspired by, initially in regards to the president's personal attachment to it, with Bo getting cancer from being exposed to burn pits and so forth, and dying from said cancer. But the fight began with Vietnam veterans. Right. For anyone who knows Steve Robinson, we know that that's where the fight began with Vietnam Veterans for America, and so I put that in the policy, or into the talking points, to ensure that when President Biden and with Vice President Harris and with Governor Walz, when they're speaking about the PACT Act, that we're acknowledging that this fight began with our Vietnam veterans, right, and their exposure to Agent Orange and so forth. Our next speaker, Congressman Mike Thompson, is the first Vietnam veteran who was elected to the California State Senate, and so I'd like to give him the podium now.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me, and thank you all for being here. I can't tell you what a great honor it is to be here with all of you and with all of my colleagues, those who are veterans, those who are family members of veterans, and those who honor and respect and work for the veterans that have served our country. Thank you very, very much. Well, I'm Mike Thompson from California. I am a veteran. I served with the 173rd Airborne Brigade in Vietnam. All right, thank you. And I'm going to be a little repetitive because we've already heard it a couple of times since we've been here in Chicago. But I'm one of those guys who at 17 left high school. My mother signed for me to join the Army. I went in, I went through jump school, I went through my infantry training, I went to Vietnam, I served there. It was nothing like what we were trained for. You know, we learned about squads and teams and how many people were on those. We had like 21 people in my platoon in Vietnam. I got there as a staff sergeant. I was a squad leader for a minute. I was a platoon sergeant for a minute, and I was a platoon leader up until the time I was wounded and came home. I came home to California, Travis Air Force Base and Letterman General Hospital. I recovered. I went back to what was then Fort Benning, Georgia, and was an instructor in the Army's Airborne School, where I taught other people with the equal amount of sense as I had to jump out of airplanes. When I got out of the service, I went home, and because of the GI Bill, I was able to not only finish the high school education that I left behind, but get an undergraduate degree and a master's degree. Because of veterans' health care, I was able to get the health care that I needed because I carry a pretty sizable disability from when I was wounded in Vietnam. And because of the GI Bill, I was able to buy my first house in my hometown of St. Helena, California, so I could provide a roof over my head, my wife's head, and my children's head. That's something that every veteran should be able to have. Good health care, good educational opportunities, a roof over your head, and an opportunity for a job. And we should all be working tirelessly to make sure that that happens. I believe that my experience as a veteran, my experience in Vietnam, my experience with my fellow Army members gives me a better understanding of what we need to be doing in Congress for our veterans and for their families. And you can see that in the House and in the Senate and in the Biden administration, that was understood. And that's why we were able to expand veterans' benefits with the PAC Act greater than we've ever been able to expand them before. And don't lose sight of the fact, and it's so often overshadowed by the PAC Act, don't lose sight of the fact that Joe Biden also signed the Compact Act into law, because 20 veterans a day are taking their own lives, and that shouldn't be happening. We need to double down and make sure we change that. Well, those experiences and those allies that we have in the House and in the Senate allow us to do great things for veterans and their families. You know, it was myself and another veteran, an Air Force veteran, but nonetheless a veteran, who started the Veterans Caucus. And that's become very popular. A number of, I think all of our veterans belong to. We're able to advance a lot of public policy. Another veteran, Army veteran, Don Young, who's sadly no longer with us, he and I started the Veterans Internship Program on Capitol Hill because we knew that the more veterans that worked in the halls of Congress, the better it would be for public policy for veterans and their families, and the better it would be for veterans and their families. Well, we have another opportunity to put veterans and their families first this November by electing the Harris-Walz ticket. Yeah. Vice President Harris has already shown us that she understands the issues related to veterans and their families. She was part of the administration that did all the things that every one of us have talked about today. And Tim Walz, notwithstanding what they say on the other side of the aisle, Tim Walz is a highly respected, incredibly successful veteran. 24 years served as a command sergeant major, the highest ranking non-commissioned officer to serve in the House, and I'm proud to say that for his 12 years I served with him, and he was fantastic, and he will bring that to the office of the Vice President. He will bring it to the team of Harris-Walz, and we will all benefit from that. It will be a respected administration, one with high ethics and high morals, ones that understand that all Americans have something to contribute, and you don't sit on the sidelines with your bone spurs and criticize other people who maybe aren't as fortunate enough as you are, maybe wasn't able to inherit the incredible family wealth that you inherited, Everybody has something to bring to the picnic. Everybody has something to contribute to make our country the great country it is today. And that's the sort of thing that we're going to get back to. And I'm jazzed about this new administration. And the only thing between the Harris-Walsh administration and us today is us. We need to make it happen.
Right.
And there is nothing we can say nothing that we should say, well, we can't do that or somebody else should do. We should do everything. Right. Just like when we were in the military. If it needed to be done, you do it. If it's postcards, if it's walking, if it's calling, if it's donating, if it's driving somebody to the polls, we've got to make it happen, because this election is I believe, the most important election in my lifetime. And we need the outcome that we're here this week promoting. So thank you all very much for your service. Thank you for what you're going to do. Let's win this thing.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. You good for now? All right, so for those who are new to this, so we have these meetings, they're supposed to be quarterly, but DNC schedules, so sometimes it's not as quarterly as, as they were supposed to be. And so when we meet, when it's not a convention, I actually like to do work, right? Because if we don't do work, then we don't know what work that we need to do, right? So now that there are no members of Congress here to speak, now there are going to be some more people to come later. I gave an assignment out to my leadership to do reports. And I know there's one person in particular who says she needs to leave soon, so if she's still here, Debbie, where are you? You here? There she is. Come on, New Jersey. Come up here and give your report for us, please. Either way, Debbie. Whichever's easiest for you.
After this one, we'll do my phone. Good afternoon, everybody. How many Navy vets are in here? Go Navy.
Y'all are proud.
Oh, that was wrong. Okay. So, in New Jersey, there are 338,000 veterans. There's an estimated 630 homeless veterans. So, let me tell you why New Jersey has earned the great state of New Jersey. I'm sorry. Okay. You got it. So, beginning in New Jersey, fiscal year 2025, which actually began July 1st this year, Governor Murphy invested $31 million to bring Garden State veteran homelessness to a functional zero within 2 years. The initiative, Bringing Veterans Home, will improve services and support systems with easy ways for veterans and service members to get the help they need through dedicated and accelerated pathways to permanent housing. This includes enhanced funds for emergency, short-term, and permanent housing vouchers, coupled with professional case management to set veterans on the path to long-term success. New Jersey is proud to take the lead in this initiative. Now, did New Jersey earn the great state title?
That's right. I love New Jersey. I do.
I'm gonna pinch you.
Go ahead.
But I'm happy to be here. Thank you for letting me go. I really do have to run. I had to give this report. I'm very proud. Our governor is all for veterans, you know? Not just for, thank you, not just for, he doesn't just talk about it, he's about it. So that's my report.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me get out of here.
Next up, there you go. Next up, Will Addig, who's our vice chair for Union Veteran Outreach.
Thanks so much. How's everyone doing today? I think we just need to get a little bit louder for today because I think this meeting's going to keep going and it's going to get really exciting. And I just want to thank all my the other chairs and especially Tehran for all he's doing to make sure veterans have a seat at the table, right? I think for way too often we found veterans being used as props. And I think another group of people that had a convention not too far from here a few weeks ago, they love to use props. They love to hold flags. What I want to know is who's going to stand next to me when I'm in a foxhole, when I'm putting rounds down range, whether it's rounds in a combat zone or on the Capitol steps when we're trying to fight to get the PACT Act and we had to sleep for days because Republicans decided to strip that funding that time. A few days ago, somebody was in Western Pennsylvania and they said, always faithful. And as they attacked a command sergeant major who spent 24 years serving our country. To me, that's unacceptable. Always faithful is not taking 5 members of Congress to Western Pennsylvania who voted against the PACT Act. That's not always faithful. That's a Blue Falcon. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. So I wanted to thank you again. This is my first time speaking here. I'm the Executive Director of the Union Veterans Council at the National AFL-CIO. We represent over one... And if you haven't seen, I think labor is part of this conversation this year, just like veterans are part of the conversation. We have over 1.3 million rank and file members who work in every single job. One of them is Tim Waltz. People don't realize that. We hold our own together. We support our own. We've been in Minnesota before, knocking on doors, because we want to kick in the door for the Democratic Party as veterans. I think that this is what this committee is going to do. So I really want to say a couple policies because we've heard a lot about PACT Act, VA, but at the Union Veterans Council, we're a socioeconomic-based veteran group. When we walk in the halls of Congress, you know what we get told? Those aren't veterans issues. But let me tell you what, when 31% of our American veterans who served our country earn less than $31,000 a year, it's about damn time we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. If we're going to talk about gun safety and suicide, let's start with that conversation. If we're going to talk about freedom and democracy, let's make sure our female veteran, our women veteran, excuse me, I got to catch myself every time. I'm a senior citizen millennial. I grew up in the 90s. I work every day. I work every day to try and make myself a little bit better. But at the same time, freedoms are being stripped away from our veterans. Those are policies that we fight for at the AFL-CIO, and we fight with our veterans. And what we want to do is we want to be combined arms with you guys. So if you are a regional director, if you're in a state, either reach out to me, to Ron, reach out to your local unions. You've got foot soldiers. I've got a giant email list, and one of the most important missions I've done for the last 2 years is because of my members. The minute that the Ukraine war happened, right, when we had a certain former president that tried to hold hostage equipment to save lives, we knew we had to do something. We had over 2,000 emails from union members across the country asking how to help. That led to us working with the Embassy of Ukraine to help work with veterans in Ukraine. We started an organization called the U.S.-Ukraine Veterans Bridge, and it's my honor to have a Ukrainian veteran that 20 years old didn't go off to war to fight in some random country. He went to fight for his homeland. And lost both his legs at the age of 20, defending his home. That is the same kind of people that Donald Trump calls suckers and losers here in the United States. We're honored here to have Dennis Sohai, I'm going to mess that up, groups from Razum, who's another organization with Ukraine, and a great group here in Chicago helping veterans out, Revive Soldiers. So I wanted to make a point to have him here because this party supports our allies. This party supports freedom. And we wanted to make sure you were here to see that. Now, we've got to get to work. We've got a few days left. We've got J.D. Vance going around attacking Tim Walz the same day Donald Trump starts to disparage Medal of Honor winners. Let me tell you about Ross McGinnis. He won a Medal of Honor at the age of 18 in Abaniya, Iraq. Jumped on a grenade. I'll never tell this story in public because it shouldn't be political. He sacrificed to save 4 other people. That's no mega donor. That's an American hero. And we got to remember that. And we need to take those words back. So I'm going to leave. Thank you so much. The Union Veterans Council is here to fight.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it. So our next speaker, and I want to give her some credit, because she's probably never heard this publicly before. So, thank you. So our next speaker, she's probably never heard this publicly before, because I'm probably the only person, there's probably maybe 3 of us who have this sentiment. But when she chaired our party, I am very grateful of her chairmanship, because she provided the ability for our council to function. And to take a long story, some scotch and cigars, to explain what that really means. But I'm grateful for that period when she was the chair, because it allowed us to grow and allowed me to flex. Again, more scotch and more cigars. So without going into more detail on that, Councilwoman Deb Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you so much, Mr. and Madam Chair. It is really wonderful to be able to join the Veterans and Military Families Council, and I am so proud that this is such a large crowd, and that this council is here, and the kind of programming that you've had this week, and it is really a special part of my record as chair of the Democratic National Committee to make sure that this council was robust, that we were committed to it as a party, and that we were able to utilize this council as a platform to draw the contrast that so clearly exists between the way Democrats approach caring for our veterans and our active duty service members and the way the extreme MAGA Republicans do. And I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about that. But Sue, I am so glad that a step was taken toward adding a military spouse, a military family member in a leadership role as part of this council. That is so important because we always talk about it's not just the service member that serves, it's the whole family that serves. And I've been privileged to be either the chair or the ranking member of the MILCON VA, the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Subcommittee, for 8 years. And and that happened actually, I ascended to that role during my time as DNC chair. And so that committee is the only committee in the Congress that is responsible for the entire arc of an individual's service, from their start on active duty all the way through their time as a veteran, and including when we bury and honor our nation's veterans in military cemeteries, and how we honor them in our cemeteries, but in addition to the battleground monuments. So it is an incredibly important responsibility, and it's one that unfortunately we've had to engage in a few fights that never should have actually occurred. For the past 8 years, during that time, we've been able to make some really incredible progress. For women veterans, for example, for the longest time, the women veterans portion of the VA budget was eclipsed and consumed by a larger portion of the VA budget, lumped in with a few other categories. And so even though women veterans are the fastest growing veteran that is served at the VA, I think we're approaching 20% now of the veterans that are served at the VA are women veterans, yet their budget to serve those women was never carved out as an individual line item. Well, when you have the first woman to ever chair the Milcon VA Appropriations Subcommittee, now we do have a separate line item that carves out that money and ensures that we can show that we are doing right by our women veterans. And you know, we brought the Republicans along, and we actually have a pretty balanced and bipartisan approach to taking care of our veterans until the ugly head of politics is revealed. And so we duke it out every single fiscal year with ridiculous riders that, you know, do important things like prohibiting the pride flag from being raised over VA facilities and interrupting and getting involved with the freedom, the reproductive freedom that all veterans should be able to access equally, except for years, the VA has had a policy dictated by extremists that only allowed for IVF treatment to be provided to heterosexual married couples. Let that sink in for a minute. We have LGBTQ plus veterans. We have women veterans who aren't necessarily married. We have male veterans who aren't necessarily married. And it doesn't matter what your marital status or the choices that you've made on who you love or in what way you choose to partner with someone special in your life. If you have a service-connected fertility disability, then you should be able to access, and thanks to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris under Secretary McDonough, now we have a policy that will be implemented that will be discrimination-free when it comes to access to IVF. And we fought that battle for years with the Republicans, and we were able to successfully to beat back their discrimination, but they still won't allow us to carry that permanent change in the bill. So we're reliant on the policy in the agency, which is why it's so important who is in the White House. Because of course, if the wrong people get in the White House, then that policy can change in the blink of an eye. It's also, I'm sure you joined me in being appalled that we actually had to fight to pass the PACT Act. I mean, for years, veterans have fought so valiantly to be able to make sure that their service-connected exposure, which is nearly all exposure to toxic substances and the related healthcare challenges that result from that exposure, that there isn't this internecine battle that is so incredibly complicated to prove that your exposure caused the illness that you have. And that's what made the PACT Act so critical to pass. And if you remember, a couple of years ago, the Senate, we were unable to pass that bill out of the Senate initially because of the Republican filibuster. And we were able to, thankfully, along with a lot of support from incredible veterans, and like some of you in this audience, to shame the Republicans into finally relenting and being able to get that bill passed into law. It was critical. The number of veterans that have been able to be signed up for those benefits has been absolutely amazing. But of course, the Republicans recently proposed to cut $14 billion in funding dedicated to support sick and at-risk veterans, and they only finally funded it when we drew a line in the sand and essentially were willing to shut the government down if they didn't agree to go along with it. Look, the difference between us and the Republicans is that Donald Trump shut the government down because he was trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act and take away access to health care, we were ready to shut the government down because we were standing and fighting to make sure that we could expand access to health care for people who had fought for this country. And there have been so many other facets of this fight that has been critical that we win. And when we have Tim Walz, a 24-year veteran of the United States Army, as Vice President of the United States, we are going to have someone who really understands the nitty-gritty nuances of service in our military and the importance. He chaired the VA committee in the House of Representatives and has been a staunch and stalwart leader on behalf of our nation's veterans. The other important thing that's part of the committee that I'm privileged to lead on the Democratic side is that we have 30% of our military infrastructure worldwide that is in fair or poor condition. Meaning that I have been in travels around the world to visit our service members and review the state of the facilities that they are using or that are protecting them or protecting our multi-billion-dollar equipment. And the state of some of this infrastructure, rusted out hangars and doors that protect in places like Okinawa, where when I've been there and representing Florida, we understand the impact of salt air on metal. They showed me a hangar door that they basically used an H-A-N-G-E-R to close the door of the H-A-N-G-A-R. I wish I were kidding. I mean, because they had not gotten the resources from the Republicans from the Republican administration to be able to make sure that they could protect our multi-billion-dollar investment. So you just can't make this stuff up. They instead focus on culture wars and the things that matter to their extreme MAGA base, as opposed to really walking the walk instead of just, talking about their support for veterans. I'm a show me person, not a tell me person, and so show me your budget. Yep. And that will be a clear reflection of your values. And if you compare budgets, there really is no comparison. And so we have to make sure that we do everything we can, and I know everyone in this room will, to get out there, ride the wave of this incredible convention and what we've been able to accomplish on behalf of our veterans, because the Republicans are going to distort the record, and we cannot let them do that. We have an exemplary record of fighting for veterans. What they have done with Donald Trump having the audacity, because that's a milder term, to suggest that, and you remember the quotes well, I'm sure, but Donald Trump said he liked, quote, people who weren't captured, and he said that a medal to honor civilians was, quote, much better than the Medal of Honor, which is the highest military honor granted for bravery in the face of risk of life and going beyond the call of duty. And suckers and losers, exactly. So when you have the person who occupies the highest office in the land, who is the commander-in-chief, speaking like that about our military service members and our veterans, we need to make sure that we send a strong message that that is unacceptable and that we need to end Donald Trump's political career on the shoulders of Democratic veterans and veterans who understand we need a president in office who's going to have their back. Thank you so much to the Military Families Council. Thank you all for being here.
All right, our special guest is not yet here, right? So, Otto.
No, I'm going.
Oh, no, that's right. Sue's inspired now. She is. She said, Tyrone, I'm inspired. I have words to share.
I am inspired because Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, told us everything that they've been doing for female veterans and so on, but I wanted to share with you a little bit about what this administration and what this party does for military families, because I don't think we talk about that enough, and I know you guys care about your military families. So when Congressman Beyer was talking about the WOTC legislation that he sponsors, actually that's one of our bills that we've been working on, I have to say that the first day we went up on Congress, up on Capitol Hill about 8 years ago when we started this journey, we went directly to the Democrats. And at the time, it was Congressman Panetta and Congressman Delgado from New York. And they didn't even ask 2 questions. They said, this is what we need to do for military spouses. Let's get this done. They worked in a bipartisan manner to bring Republicans to the table, which meant that we were able to end, I think, the last Congress with 282 co-sponsors in the Congress and then in the House, and then with Senator Kaine in the Senate, another Republican from Virginia, we were able to end up with, I think it was 35 senators co-sponsoring the bill for military families. So not only are they committed to military families, but they're able to get their Republican counterparts to work in a bipartisan manner. And this is what we need in the next administration. We need adults in the room who can work across the aisle. And the only people who are going to deliver that are going to be Harris and Walz, right? Because can you really trust Donald Trump and J.D. Vance to work across the aisle to do what's best for Americans and American military families? I don't think we can. So an example of what this administration has also done for military families, President Biden and Dr. Biden recognize that military spouses have a hard time maintaining careers, as do caregivers. So they issued an executive order for economic opportunity for caregivers and military spouses. And not only did they put out the paperwork, but then they started to walk the talk. When they recognized that there was a lot of missing information, they brought all the agencies together to do a view of what they're doing for military spouses. And when they recognized that military spouses who work overseas, if you're a military spouse married to a member of the military right now and you work in the federal government, you can now take your job overseas with something called a DEDO. When they realized that the State Department curtailed these DEDOs because they no longer wanted to manage them, they called DOD and the State Department together and they signed an MOU. So now military spouses are able to move with their careers overseas, because we all know that decisions to get in or get out of the military are made around the kitchen table, and that solves it. So that MOU allowed for military spouses to maintain their jobs. And this administration is always looking for ways to support our military families, whether it's through child care services, whether it's through better military housing, whatever it takes, they listen and they come to the table with solutions we need. So I encourage you to get engaged and to do what it takes. And I encourage you to get engaged with the military families at the installations where you live. I know our state directors are here, and I know that you guys are so good at getting involved in canvassing and writing postcards, but reach out to your military families and get them involved too. The campaign has stood up. Actually, what is it, state directors in every single state? Military family state directors in every single state. So we would encourage you to connect to those campaign state directors and see what you can do to get visibility into the installations, because they're going to amplify what you're already doing, and they will help you carry the message to the active duty. So please, please, please work together to make that happen. And we all need to do everything we can this election, right? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
And Tyrone's going to say, our special guest isn't here, but everybody's going to want to sit where they are and not move, because this is going to be one of those epic, iconic moments of the convention, yeah, that you're not going to want to miss. So
Just like Tuesday's meeting.
maybe just talk amongst yourselves before they get here. Otto's going to do his report next. Thanks.
So, while Otto comes up here, what we were doing, because for those who are new to our council, politics never stops. Supporting candidates never stop, right? It's a 24-hour, 24/7, 7-Eleven type job, right? Quote-unquote job, because none of us get paid for this, right? We have elections, at least if you're in Virginia, we have elections every year, right? And so, knowing that this was going to be a dogfight to win this presidential race, we had our members, our leaders, and our volunteers working in other races. Senate races, congressional races, preparing for when it was time to start knocking on doors for President Biden. And then when we had the reset, we were knocking on doors and making phone calls for Vice President Harris. And so Otto's going to discuss with you all some of the metrics involved and how we determined where we needed to be in regards to congressional districts. Hopefully we'll have enough time for him to explain it all, but nonetheless, we're not randomly going out and being involved in particular races, because we have to win and maximize our utility. So, Otto, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
It's a really good-looking screensaver, since I can get to the page I want to show you. But good morning, or good afternoon, actually. It's been a long 3 days already. Good afternoon, Democrats.
Good afternoon.
And more importantly, good afternoon, all our veterans. Thank you for being here. My name is Otto Lee. An honor to be serving as your vice chair on this esteemed board. I'm a 28-year Navy veteran, retired U.S. Navy commander, currently serving as a county supervisor in Santa Clara County with 2 million people in Silicon Valley. What we've been working this past year, all this time, is that besides making sure that the Bone Spur draft dodger that really does not appreciate what a Congressional Medal of Honor sacrifice is like, to not be back in the White House, the other most important thing we want to make sure is to make sure we have a Congress that is going to support us. A Democratic Congress for both House and Senate is so important. Most importantly right now is what? The House, right? Because we win to make sure we win that back, but also with only so few seats in the Senate, that one, even though we're holding right now, is really by a threat. So let me start with the Senate first, with some of the races. So please take down your phone, take down your notes. We're going to go really fast because we don't have a lot of time to go through the important races that we want to cover that are ran by our veterans, service members, and those who have supported us in our national security, like DOD, CIA, FBI. Sounds good? Yeah. Ready? Okay, let's go. All right. First place I want to talk about is state of Arizona. Ruben Gallegos is running for an open seat. Yes, against Kari Lake. And I don't think I need to say more about Kari Lake. I think everybody knows what we're dealing with here. And the good news is that we are winning in the sense of our polling up 5 by Gallego. Our fundraising. Gallego has outraised her $30 to $10 million with a cash on hand advantage of 8-2. So this is a race we absolutely could win, and actually we are expecting that race to help us win Arizona on the top of the ticket as well, right? Yes. Second race we'll talk about, Michigan. Our Congress member, Alistair Slotkin, former CIA, is facing former FBI agent Michael Rogers. She was also serving as the acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security. And so we got some really heavy hitter here. Now, of course, the state of Michigan is going to be a lot tighter. The latest poll has her up 3 points, but it's very much within the margin of error. So we need to fight hard. Good news, she has outraised Rogers $22 to $5 million. And so right now, we are still ahead on fundraising, but that's another fight we need to win. New Jersey. Congressman Andy Kim, DOD National Security Council, has run a brilliant campaign and has been favored by every poll, outraised opponents every term 4-1, replacing Menendez, remember that one? And polls have Kim up 7 points. This is the one that I'm most excited about to talk to everybody. It's a state that we potentially could actually be an offense and flip a red seat. And this is the red seat in the state of Missouri. Who we have? We have a Marine Corps veteran, Lucas Kunz. He has a kind of a perfect storm of positive wins behind him so far. The antitrust leader and Council of Foreign Relations member is now making a major run in Missouri. The abortion referendum is also on the Missouri ballot. And who is he running against? Anybody knows? Josh Hawley! Ooh, right? And to make matter worse, his wife, Josh Hawley's wife, is also one of the lawyers that successfully overturned Roe v. Wade. Another boo! Right now, polls have Kunz around 3 to 5 points behind, but what we know is Hawley is widely unpopular in a state that's have a history of Democratic senators like Claire McCaskill, right? So that's very much a purple state. We do have some fundraising disadvantage at first, but guess what? On the cash on hand, we are talking about only $1 million difference. We're talking 5 versus 4 million, which is really, really tight. So really could use help for this race. Got it, everybody? Got it. Yes, Lucas Kunz. I'm doing a fundraiser for him on Monday. He's coming to my office in San Jose, believe it or not. So let's get that for Lucas. There are many other Senate races at all, but we don't have the time to go through all of them. I'm just going to mention very quickly. John Tester of the Veterans Affairs, we got to defend Montana, right? Sheriff Brown, Ohio, also served on Veterans Affairs. We got to save that one. Tim Kaine, who serves on Armed Forces Subcommittee on Virginia. We got to defend that one as well. And there's one fun one, so I want you to look at. An Army veteran, Ty Pinkins, in the state of Mississippi. That's right, you hear that. It's a tough race, but you know what? You never know. You just never know. All right, so that's my House, our Senate report for you. Now let's get to the House. We have so many races to go over, and we don't have a whole lot of time today, but let's talk about some of the most important races that's being targeted by the Republicans that we're going to defend. Let's start with that first. Jared Golden, Maine 2nd, United States Marine Corps veteran as well. He's one of the toughest races because his district is R+6, and you know what that means. That is a tough seat to hold. He has been running as only veteran, and that's been great, but this time around he actually has another veteran that he's running against, also Marine Corps.
So,
yes.
Otto loves this stuff. That's why I love the fact I found this guy. Like, great. We actually give this report out, we do it weekly now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have this come out every week. So if you want to give it Otto, he'll get you his ED's email address or whatever, and we'll make sure you get this info, because you can't know how to fight if you don't know where to fight.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
So next up, for all the people who were patient and came instead of trying to go to United Center at 10 o'clock in the morning to get a seat, I want to introduce my friend, one of the few people who looked out for me a long time ago, and get another scotch and cigar conversation, a mayor of one of my sister states, or maybe feuding state, because I'm a Virginia guy all day. Fellow Army veteran, and like I said, good friend, him and his wife, Dawn, Wes Moore.
Bless you.
How y'all doing? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Patriots. Please take a seat, y'all. Great to see you. Good to see you. It is such an honor to be here with folks who understand that nothing that we enjoy comes easy. Nothing that we enjoy comes free. Everything is earned. Nothing is given. And who understand that everything that we enjoy, it must be protected. And first, I just want to say to our remarkable co-chairs and to this remarkable team, thank you. This means the world that in a time like now, when we are lifting up what issues are important to the Democratic Party, what issues are we going to fight for when we have a President Harris and a Vice President Waltz, which we will have come January. What things do we know that we are going to prioritize when it comes to our families, when it comes to our missions, when it comes to our friends, when it comes to our colleagues? How are we going to make sure that the idea of leave no one behind is not just a slogan, but it's actually a governance philosophy? It's the way we do our work. And the way we understand that thank you for your service cannot always be the end of a conversation. And it cannot be an empty statement. That people need to understand our service and then be willing to actually put together the ideas, the resources, and the focus to be able to make it happen. That does not get on platforms just because. And I want to thank this team for making sure that it happens, and I want to thank not just the Vice President and not just Governor Waltz, but for saying that in this time, in this administration, as we push forward, when we welcome a Harris-Waltz administration into Washington, that us, our families, and our issues will be top of mind.
And I'm excited for the fact that we got one of our own that's about to be the next vice president of the United States.
Yes.
You know, I've been having this conversation with a lot of folks who are not in the military. And they're like, so explain to me what a sergeant major does. How important is a sergeant major? And I said, look, well, first of all, let's be clear. It's less than 1% of the NCO Corps. Not to mention the fact for all of us, you know, I finished as an 03. And I kind of have to explain to people when they're trying to understand kind of the ranking system. And I said, let's be clear. If you see a unit that runs well, it's because of their senior NCOs. All right? If you see an officer that has a good OER, like I had pretty good OERs. That is exclusively because my senior NCOs made sure I had good OERs. Let's be clear about the way that this works. And I think about someone who understands what it means to take care of their folks. For 24 years, someone who put on the uniform, the same ones we wore, with the same flag on his shoulder, with the same focus, making sure that us and our families, just like he did when he was a senior NCO, that his folks and his families were okay. It's exciting to think that we're going to have someone like that who's not just helping to drive our policy, but who's helping us to remind ourselves of our moral obligation. Because you all are the ones who voluntarily chose to raise your hands. You're the ones who had family members who voluntarily chose to raise your hands. And to do something that less than 1% of our population is willing to do. People who understand that freedoms are not free. And they must be protected. And you all are the protectors. And we need to make sure that you and your families and all of us who we served with, that that's remembered. You know, when I first joined the Army when I was 17 years old, and I say I wasn't old enough to sign the paperwork. My mother signed the paperwork for me. But after my teenage years, and my wife knows this, and I'm grateful to not just have my wife here by my side, but she's by my side every single day, Maryland's First Lady, Dawn Moore. You know, and I say that, you know, but after my teenage years, my mom would sign whatever paperwork the Army put in front of her to sign me out. And I remember thinking about that as a focus area when we first made the decision to run for governor. Where I'd never held political office in my life. I'd never run for anything. I had never gone through that type of experience before. I do not come from a political family. You know, I say that, you know, I had to convince some members of my family to vote for me when I ran for governor. And it's not because my family and I aren't cool, it's that I had to convince certain members of my family to vote. That we just don't come from that culture. Right? And I remember when people were talking about, well, what are some of the issues that you want to get done? I thought about my own experiences. I thought about the fact that when I came back from Afghanistan, I got involved in veterans advocacy issues, and that was one of the first things, that's the first things we met on. Yeah. Because I realized that oftentimes when we were deployed, we got everything we asked for when we needed it, and I had people who, when they came back home, were waiting 9 months to see a doctor. Their promises were broken. And we started coming back, and we came back, we started advocating to make sure that we would stop breaking promises to people who were willing to raise their hands when the country asked them to. That's right. And so we decided to go in and not just kind of like slow walk, but sprint towards solutions when I took on the role of governor. That we decided to introduce legislation in our first years that focused on things like, and I want to be thankful, and I'm thankful that my wife actually not just worked on the legislation, but actually testified on behalf of it. The first lady in 20 years to testify on behalf of legislation in the state of Maryland. But We introduced and testified and passed legislation. I proudly signed legislation that actually made the spouses of those who are serving a preferential class when it comes to hiring and retention and employment.
Yes.
Because oftentimes employers were trying to get and understand when they're looking at someone's resume and it says, well, they worked here for 9 months or they worked here for 13 months, and they're like, well, this person can't keep a job. No, it's not that they can't keep a job, it's that they continue to move around with their spouse. And so we passed legislation in the state of Maryland to make sure that employers didn't just understand that, but employers were incentivized to make sure that spouses can get hired and can continue the career trajectory even though they are being good partners to their family members who the country continues to ask them to give more and more. That we made Maryland the first state in the country that now has a pathway for free dental care and health care for members of our National Guard, because I cannot understand how someone can put on the uniform of this country and put the flag of this country on their shoulder and they do not have dental care. That we passed legislation called the Time to Serve Act, personally introduced and testified and proudly signed a piece of legislation for the Time to Serve Act, which meant if a person in our state is both a state employee and a member of a National Guard, that we would double their time of PTO, because oftentimes what was happening is you had people who were working state jobs, when they would go do their service, they would had to burn PTO in order to do their service, and we said, not in our state. We are going to make sure that people have enough PTO so when they're using their PTO, they can use it for things like spending time with their family and taking time off instead of doing drill. Making Maryland the state that serves. And making it the best place for not just military and veterans, but also for their family members. There's a solemn obligation that we make to people. That when we raised our hand and we pledged allegiance to the Constitution, when we promised that we would make sure we are protecting our friends and our family and our neighbors and our country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when the country asked us to give, our family members to give, you said yes, with just a basic agreement that this would also be a nation that would protect you and your family members as well. And it's high time that we as a country make sure we're honoring that commitment. And I am thrilled that tonight we're going to hear from someone who I am so excited that in the next 6 months I'll be able to call Madam President.
Yes.
And knowing that her and Coach Waltz, Sergeant Major Waltz, Governor Waltz, the multiple titles that he has, that those two in partnership are going to truly, truly be our partners inside the work. Yes, sir. Be people who we know that they are always going to have an open door to us. That they are going to be people who respect our service and don't denigrate it. That these are people who are going to honor our service and not disrespect it. That these are people who are going to lift up those who we lost in combat and not disregard them. Or somehow either confuse the Medal of Honor with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And I don't know if he's either confused or just have no interest in actually understanding the difference between the two. But people who are truly going to be our partners inside the work to create a more perfect union. Ones who are going to honor those who are making sure that our freedom is protected, and ones who remind us that freedom is not free. There's a cost. But that cost is worth it because the people who have served are worth it. And so I'm thankful for the fact that I can stand here as one of the only post 9/11 vets that we have in the country serving as a chief executive of a state. But I'm also incredibly thankful to stand here as an advocate, as a surrogate, as a sponsor, and as a friend, and someone who understands that the oath that I took when I was 17 years old, I still honor. The dog tags that I was given when I was 17 years old, I still wear. And I will for the rest of my life. Because the obligation that I made is one that I will make sure I protect. And so I'm thankful for each and every one of you for remembering what we were taught. Leave no one behind. Ever. God bless you guys. And thank you so much for all you continue to do. Oh, thank you.
So one thing about leadership is knowing how to read a room, and though we still have a little time left, everyone needs to get to United Center. So I am ending this meeting.
Well done.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Oh, please, yeah.
Awesome. Take care.
That's it. We'll wait for, I'll see you in February if I don't see you before. You can give me a new report. Yeah, that's when the next meeting is. Well, that's ASDC. That's not